Welcome back after a long hiatus to the Saxton podcast. Coming off our third straight winning season, we are back for a fourth. Good to have you again, Deuce. How you doing?
I feel reborn. Love the first pot of the season. It's great. Feels great to be back.
I was extremely energized when I received the text the other night. Are we doing the pod again? Let's do it. It got me reinvigorated for the fall. So here we are. Before we get to the college football, let's start with golf. Tour Championship about to tee off. Give me your thoughts on the Tour Championship, the new rules, and what you think about what will transpire this weekend.
That's what I think about the Tour Championship.
Interesting.
I get it. They're trying to reward the guys that have played well all season, but it sort of backfired when Justin Thomas finally wins an event last week. Very impressive. All credit to him. That's his first win, and now he's in the driver's seat for everything. When guys like Brooks, who have dominated all year, now are behind him. They keep trying these new things, and they still can't get it right. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Would you be in favor of the system for this weekend if the points were different and maybe Brooks was in first?
God, I don't know. Maybe I would have to see how that. Have to see how that played out. I just don't like the whole playoff format. I think it's the bigger issue. I think it's boring. It's made up. I know they're trying to do something different, but it's just you're not going to get guys super motivated about money. And I know this is a ton of money when they were winning a ton of money all year. I don't know what the solution is. I've seen ideas like putting the Players' Championship as the last tournament of the year. I mean, that's got some cachet. Maybe that would work. Or maybe have the last tournament of the year, the PGA Championship right now. Something like that. There's got to be something. The trophy has to be more meaningful to me than what the playoffs are.
I like it for the fact that you don't have all the formulas going on as to who can win if they finish 7th place. I like for that respect, but definitely. I agree that Justin Thomas has no business being in first place right now.
He's a great player, but he missed half the year with a wrist injury. Hadn't won even when he had come back. So it's not like he missed half the year and then won 3 times. And now he's in the driver's seat. It's just, that can't happen.
I saw Janela tweet that he thought they should go to a bracket style, which I think would be cool if there wasn't already the WGC.
Agreed.
And have the top 32, maybe the top 8 guys get by to give a little bit of an incentive.
Agreed. I had the bracket idea. I know the networks hate the match play, though, because you run that risk of getting Abraham Answer versus Jason Kokrak the last day and nobody watches.
Right. I understand that.
You know.
How about as far as the Tour Championship always being at East Lake? Are you in favor of starting to move it around?
I'm always in favor of moving around, except for the Masters. I kind of like that. East Lake's a great course. Great history there. Awesome old school design. I'm not sure it shows great on TV, but I'm all for moving around. Try something different. I think the playoffs and the Tour Championship it's sort of like the PGA was before they moved to May. They need some way to make it different, elevate it, maybe separate it by going to like resort courses that people play. I don't know, something like that.
Speaking of the move to May, what was your thoughts now that we're through the 2019 schedule reinvented?
I actually liked the schedule. I think next year is really going to be kind of the test for it when you throw in the Olympics and the trying to qualify for the Ryder Cup. I'm very curious to see how the Europeans specifically play this tour. Guys that are predominantly on this tour, like John Rahm, are we going to see him head over to Europe June 1st, and basically that's the last we see him because he wants to make the Euro Ryder Cup team and the Olympic team for Spain? I worry a little bit about that, but overall, I like the new schedule. It seemed like some of the lesser events had a little bit more juice to them. And I love the PGA in May. I think it's great. PGA in August was dead as a doornail.
I agree. I did like the new schedule. To your point earlier, I just wish they could do something with the playoff if they're going to keep it.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at too.
Your thoughts on the year as a whole?
It's a good year. Some surprises, some disappointments, but I think the last sort of 7 years, 8 years, 9 years have sort of been the same, where you haven't really seen much dominance. You've seen one guy win a couple times a year, but there's always been 6 or 7 guys that have good years. I think this year we sort of saw Brooks take that step to maybe being the dominant figure the next 3 or 4 years. I'm not positive, but I think that's where we're going.
Where does his year rank in terms of majors in comparison to some of the historic years?
It's got to be up there, right? He really had a chance at the British, I thought, to kind of put a huge stamp and maybe be in that conversation. I don't think you can put it in the conversations. Tiger won 3 in a year. You can't be in that conversation unless you win 3 in a year. Second's great, but it's not winning. There's a huge difference. I thought he let a pretty big opportunity at the British kind of slip through his hands there the last day.
Which one do you think he thinks back on more and say he should have won, the British or the Masters?
Definitely the Masters. I mean, he steps on 12T. I think he had the lead once Molinari splashed it, right?
I believe you're right.
Ahead. Now
he was a group ahead, but I do believe he had at least a share of the lead at one point.
Maybe he was tied for the lead. If you're a guy of that ilk, the guy that is basically big game hunter. I mean, he doesn't win other tournaments essentially, and you have a share of the lead going into the back nine or on the back nine. I think you have to think you should have won it.
That Masters in April. Can you think of a better Masters you've seen?
No. There's been some great ones, especially for us, right? We've had some great times together with the Masters. Every other year, it seems like it really does not disappoint. I mean, we had the Cabrera one, Tiger chipping, but the leaderboard this year was just insane. There was not one quote-unquote misname on that board. And the movement that last 3 hours was just, I've never seen anything like it.
It was fantastic. And then
it was unbelievable.
To have Tiger win it, it really was like a script.
Yeah, people, you can look back at the year after that and kind of say his year was disappointing, but I think people already forget that moment when you knew he was going to win on 18, when he hit that 50-yarder kind of on the green, you knew he was going to win. I can't remember feeling like that in a long time.
Yeah, it has been a while.
It was a weird feeling, like, holy crap, I can't believe he just won.
So obviously that's probably the number one surprise of the year, but give me some of your other surprises from the year.
I mean, to me, what Brooks did was sort of surprising. I'm not sure we knew exactly what he was after last year. Yeah, he had a kind of broke through in the majors in a different sort of way, but he still didn't have the other wins to kind of give us that foreshadow saying, wow, he's going to be a dominant player. I think there were still questions, but to back it up and win 2 more and be there in the others, I think was like, holy crap, this guy could be, a 10 major win guy when it's all said and done.
Where does the Young Guns arrival on this tour rank for you?
I thought it was underrated. Golf season was probably over for a lot of people watching golf, but I mean, Thomas, Spieth, Berger, that class came in really well, but for 2 of them to win in their first 7 events, and then the other guy basically missed out by 1 point, and I think he needs like a 25th this week on the Korn Ferry Tour, Victor Hovland. For all of them to win and or get their tour card in 7 events, which is the sponsors exemptions, it's unbelievable. I'm not sure we're going to see a class like this for a while again.
Next 10 years, who are you taking to be the most successful?
Is successful win the most?
Win the most, yes.
I think Hovland will win the most.
How about
I think his game is most complete, and he's got that. I think he's got a little bit of that it factor.
In terms of majors, if you had to place a bet, who do you think will win more majors?
I would go Hovland again. I'm pretty high on Morikawa too. I think because he played at Cal and didn't have a TV show about him. People forget that he was the low guy in college. He averaged 68.5 in college, so he was the guy in college that was better than everybody else. I think people forget that. Wolf to me will win. He will miss more cuts than the other guys, if that makes sense. He'll be more up and down.
Do you think it's because of his swing, which will cause him to be more inconsistent, or is there something else to it?
I kind of think that's just the player he is. I don't think it's really swing. No, if you want to get technical, yes, it might be. Hovland keeps it square, kind of like Jim Furyk does. I forget what the test is called, but basically he keeps his club face square more than anybody on the tour, longer than anyone on the tour. So I think consistency for him won't be a problem. I think Wolf has just always been that kind of hot and cold guy. Even in college, he would win 3 straight weeks, and then he would kind of finish P30 for 3 straight weeks. So I just kind of think that's who he is.
How about on the flip side, who disappointed you this year?
Well, the obvious one's got to be Jordan Spieth, right? I'm sure that would be the answer for a lot of people. Doesn't make it to Eastlake again. I think a lot of us, me including, thought last year was sort of an aberration. You couldn't have the resume he had and not bounce back. I thought he would bounce back to some degree. I'm not sure he didn't get worse, which was kind of unfathomable. He ranks at the bottom in a lot of the ball striking, strokes gain stats. He had the best putting half-year putting of his career. So take that away, and he's kind of looking outside the top 100 at the money list if he doesn't putt well. By January 1, he'll probably fall to around 45, 50 in the world rankings, which is shocking given what he was.
Rightfully so. Couldn't disagree or argue that. But how come we give Rory McIlroy a pass?
Well, he won the Players. Big tournament. Kind of a course that shouldn't really fit his game. And if you're looking at consistency, he was the most consistent guy throughout the year. He didn't win a major, that's the thing. And at his point in his career, that's really all that matters. He's a big favorite at Augusta and didn't really do anything. It sort of seems like the events that he goes into playing well, the majors that is, and he becomes kind of the talk, the favorite, he really doesn't perform. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, it's a disappointment. He won the hardest tournament to win, technically field-wise, so I guess you give him a little credit there, but, for him, it's all about majors.
Speaking of him, he starts towards the top of the leaderboard this weekend. What number do you think is out of it before they even tee off?
God. It's 4 days, so I think it's a little overblown, but I'm looking at guys, I kind of am in that 4 under range is kind of the cutoff. That's kind of how it seems to me. I guess if somebody's at 3 under and they shoot something low the first day, but, at 3, you do have some firepower with Matsuyama, DJ, Finau, Woodland, Scott. I think you could probably pick one of those guys, but other than that, 4 is probably the cutoff for me.
Do you think that there's any added pressure on Thomas starting a tournament with a lead?
Actually, yeah, I do. I think people expect him to win, not realizing that the 10-shot lead is huge over, Bryson, but some of those guys that are second, Cantlay, Reed, Brooks, it's not that big of a lead. I mean, that's 3 holes that could be gone.
Who do you expect will make a run? Maybe not catch Thomas, but on any other week would be a winner.
Well, I think Cantlay is playing maybe the best of anybody. I can't even believe he made a run last week. His stats are off the chart. Every single category he is just really good in. I expect him to actually, if I had to pick a winner this week to win the tournament, I think it might be him. Patrick Reed's been playing really well. But other than that, Brooks is struggling with his game. I was listening to his presser last night. He is having some issues with his swing. if you look down the board, Answer, Webb, Kuchar, not sure those guys have the firepower. Your boy Rory's at 5, but does he really care? I don't know. I think Cantlay and Reed are the only other guys really that can win.
Is there any guys this week that you're focusing on when it comes to the President's Cup?
The President's Cup is interesting. Tiger's going to be tight-lipped about it. He looked decent to me last week, and I think he'll go through his normal, play at medalist with Brooks and DJ and Fowler and the guys, and JT, and kind of assess where his game is. I still think he might pick himself for the team. I just think there's too much money for the tours to not have him playing. I think there's a lot of pressure for him to pick himself. After that, it gets interesting. Kisner should be on the team, just what he's shown at match play, but he's kind of a little bit down the standings. Finau, to me, was the best player for the United States in Paris, so I would want him on the team just because he's probably going to be on the next Ryder Cup team. And then what do you do? Patrick Reed is not on it. Do you have those three? Woodland won the U.S. Open. Does he get left off? Kind of think I'm getting the feeling we're playing from 3 spots, and someone's going to get left off that probably shouldn't be on it.
Your gut right now tells you who are the 3. If Tiger picks himself.
My gut says it's going to be Reed, Finau, Kisner, only because I think Woodland might say for the President's Cup, hey, I just had twins. I also have another young kid. Been a long year. I'm fine with a pass this time.
Interesting.
That's just, might not happen. That's just a gut. If not, then who the hell knows? If it's status quo, then Kisner will be left off because we make the same dumb mistakes every time.
Your winner for the Tour Championship.
Well, Thomas is too obvious, so I'm going to go Patrick Cantlay. I think Patrick Cantlay goes 15 under-ish and wins.
More importantly, any head-to-head matchups, including the strokes, catch your eye?
Boy, I looked, and there's not a ton of value here. DJ hasn't really played well the last 2 months, specifically his driver, which is interesting. I've seen him go back and forth between 2 different model drivers, so I don't know if he's comfortable. And if you were paying attention last week, Hideki, your boy, went 63, 73, 63 Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You're getting plus 105 versus DJ. I would take a dibble on that one.
Do you think that there'll be any value tomorrow after what Thomas does?
Yes. I think you hit the nail on the head. Right now, odds are so tight that there's only 30 guys. If you wanted to take a stab with Xander at 28, I wouldn't hate you. Finau at 45, I've seen it at 50. If he shoots 65 one day, he's right there. But right now, I just don't see a ton of value.
Any other golf news before we move on?
No, I think that's it.
To college football, which is about 48 hours away.
Wow.
We obviously have broke it down. Your overall thoughts on what you've come across?
I feel like the last 8 months it's been Clemson, Bama. We're all bored. And I might be really bored, and I might have been outlandish with some of these predictions, but call me nuts, but I think it might be a little more wide open this year.
I wanted that to happen. I couldn't find it.
I know. I think I'm just hoping and praying that we don't get the same stuff, but
I do still have questions about Tua.
I have questions about both the teams. I have a good stat on Tua that I'll save for when we do the Bama preview, but I don't know. There's a lot of talent in other teams. I know it kind of usually wins out with the depth and Clemson and Bama's kind of whole team construction, but there's some other teams with a lot of good players.
Lawrence got banged up last year.
Clemson's schedule just sucks. The whole college football scheduling needs to be totally revamped. That's my theme for the year. How about that?
Until the committee comes out and starts rewarding somebody for playing somebody, it's not going to happen. I did see, I believe it was either Cowherd or Clay Travis come out and say that the first weekend of the year should be wall-to-wall, the power conferences playing each other, similar to how college basketball does the ACC Big Ten Challenge. And it should be, you have to do it. And if that forces some group of 5 teams to not be D1 double A or D1 bowl division anymore, then so be it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So which conference would you like to start with?
Oh, well, I get first dibs. Well, let's start alphabetically. Let's go to the ACC, since we're just talking about Clemson.
Give me your thoughts on Clemson.
Well, their schedule is going to be really easy. They might win every game by 20. You know, they usually have one game where they slip up because that's what Clemson traditionally does. But their schedule is so bad. The ACC is so bad that it's kind of hard not to write them in ink, especially after you get past kind of October. Boy, do they play nobody.
If anybody's going to challenge them on this schedule, in which I saw odds makers say they'll be a double-digit favorite in every game, who is it?
You know, my eyes first went to Syracuse, and I think a lot of people are going to say that, but they've been tripped up there before. I kind of think the opposite this time. I think they'll be ready for that game.
I agree.
So for me, it's A&M. You know, A&M's got some players. They got some athletes. For me, though, it's Jimbo. I think Jimbo, being at Florida State, he knows Dabo. He's played Clemson. I think Jimbo might have some shit up his sleeve for Clemson.
Interesting. I don't think they could beat them, but I could see going to NC State at the end of the year.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know where else to go.
Well, yeah, that's the problem.
Because, they're tougher. Florida State, maybe, but it's at home.
Ryan Finley's not walking through that door.
No, I mean, that's the issue. I agree with you. I had a tough time finding a loss. I have them 12-0.
I don't have a loss. Yeah, I totally agree.
Dabo's 58-4 in his last 62 games.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to think 5 draft picks went in the top 117. The 4th, the 13th, and the 17th pick, and we're still talking about them being 12-0.
Look, if they were in the SEC or even the Big Ten or something, I think we could start talking about their front 7 on defense. I don't think they're going to be nearly as good. They lost a lot of experience. Look, their quarterback's a generational talent. He'll be the number 1 pick in the draft whenever he leaves. He's awesome. They got speed everywhere on offense. He did take a big hit last year and he got dinged, but I don't think that's an issue. But in this conference, it literally doesn't matter. I don't care about their front 7. They're going to just throw an athlete out there, and he's going to get 12 sacks. It doesn't matter in this conference.
Who do you think will come in second in this side of the division?
In the Atlantic, I really, really, really wanted to elevate Syracuse or Wake. But you go back to talent and depth, and I think it's going to be Florida State. If not, they'll probably be looking for another coach. I can't have anyone else there.
It is interesting that they lost by 21 or more 5 times. They have had some turnover. Kendall Briles comes in, offensive coordinator.
I like that hire.
I do too. They were the most penalized team in the country. Their defense was decent, kept them in some games.
Yep.
I agree with you. Taggart's seat is pretty hot right now.
I think this is a team where defense actually might win a couple games this year versus just holding them in games.
They get Boise State to start the year in Jacksonville. If that goes bad, can you see this going awry quickly?
Yes. If that goes bad, I think that this is not the type of team that's going to stabilize itself, kind of right the ship. I think it unravels quickly.
I do think the biggest question mark is the offensive line, which was terrible last year. And if they're not good again, it could be Taggart getting his resume together.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that they've kind of cleaned up Francois out of there. They don't have that cloud hanging over their head. He's officially gone. It seems like maybe after a full year being there, Taggart's sort of cleaning things up. We'll see. But, you mentioned the penalties. I think stuff like that should improve this year.
Quickly back to Clemson. Their over-under was 11.5. I would lean over. I'm
not betting that just out of principle, but there's no way I can take the under.
Florida State 7.5.
I kind of lean over. That first game, though, is so damn important.
I'm with you.
So that's sort of a lean, but not great.
You mentioned Syracuse. I have them coming in third in this division. Your thoughts?
I like Syracuse. I mean, Dino Babers is one of my favorite coaches in college. I just think he does such a good job. It's tough to win there, though, sustained success. They don't have depth. Quarterback's an issue. That's the problem, is I think they're going to win some games, but Syracuse isn't a place where you're going to win 9 games. That's the problem.
They have to replace Dungy. He accounted for 30% of their rush yards and 40% of their rushing touchdowns. They also have to replace 3 offensive linemen. Their schedule's not awful. I do think a key game on their schedule is Week 2 at Maryland.
You don't think you're going to win that game?
I have it as a loss.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
I do.
I sort of like Maryland this year, but interesting.
I have their over-under at 7.5. I think if they get past Maryland, an over is not a terrible play.
7.5, is that what you said?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. I don't think it's a terrible play.
I'm not gonna push for an official, but I think it's more likely over than under if they get by Maryland.
I have Maryland as a win. I think they'll beat Maryland. They'll beat Liberty. They'll lose to Clemson. Probably beat Western and Holy Cross. I think it's that meat of the schedule that they, like at Duke. I think they lose at Duke. Stuff like that.
I have a loss at Duke as well.
Yeah. NC State, is that a loss?
I have that as a win.
So, yeah, well, maybe that's the game right there. I don't mind the over there. They could win 8.
You mentioned Wake. I also liked Wake. Not enough to challenge Clemson. Their defense was atrocious last year. They have 3 straight weeknight games to start the season, which is interesting.
Wow, I don't think I've ever seen that.
And I did see a stat that they're the fastest team in the country as far as pace goes. So they're going to need the defense to play better. Your thoughts on Wake?
Yeah, similar to what you just said, their defense can't be worse. I don't think it could be worse than it was. So when you're doing predictions like this, you kind of look at box statistics, and they kind of have to progress forward. Their schedule, like you said, I like their schedule more so. I think they're going to be in some close games. Last year they lost a lot of close games. Like I just said, usually stuff doesn't regress the other way. I think it's got to get better. I think they're more stable than the other teams at quarterback. I like new defensive coordinator. I just think they're going to win a couple of these middle-of-the-road coin flip games. We'll see. Quarterbacks, I like Hartman more than, I forget the other kid who started last year. Newman, I think's his name. I hope Hartman starts, so we'll see.
This is the schedule to start. Utah State at Rice, North Carolina, which is not a conference game, Elon, and then they go to Boston College, followed by home to Louisville. I think
they're all wins.
There's a possibility they're 6-0.
Yeah, 5-1 probably.
I have 5-1. I have 5-1, a loss at BC, but there's a shot that they're 6-0.
Who is their other non-conference game?
It's Utah State, Rice.
Utah State, that's right.
Which is not going to be an easy game early.
No, that's a hard game. That's a tough one. But I like the over here if you're calling out this schedule.
I also have the over checked. So you think at Vautech, at Clemson are losses?
We'll get to this later. I don't like Vautech, so I am not sure. That's one of those 50-50 games where last year they lost, and this year I think they could win.
Interesting. So I'll star Wake as an over 6.
Yeah.
And we can come back to that.
Especially at 6. If it was 6.5, I might hesitate, but if they win, 7 games, you're a winner here.
The next team I have as far as this division goes is NC State.
Yes, I have NC State, BC, Louisville to round it out.
I have the same NC State over under 7.5. As you mentioned, they lose Finley. New offensive coordinator, new running back. They have to replace 2 wide receivers, 3 offensive line. Major overhaul on the offense across the board. They relied on efficiency with Finley. I don't know how you can rely on efficiency anymore when you have that much overhaul. Their defense has to create turnovers. And their schedule's favorable as far as the offenses they'll face, so the defense could do that. I just don't see this offense being very good.
Yeah, totally agree. Defensively, I think they returned a bunch of starters, but they were 109 against the pass last year. They won a lot of games last year with their offense, like you said, and they won 9 games back-to-back. That's really good, but if you're telling me you basically lose I think Finley's going to be a decent pro, maybe a good backup, whatever, but when you're losing someone like that and you won 9 games, it's hard to see them getting over 7.5, losing all that.
I have this as an under.
Oh, interesting. I could get on that.
I had them 6-6.
Interesting. I need to look at that more before that's an official, but I could be talked into that.
I looked at their non-conference game, which is East Carolina, West Carolina, at West Virginia, Ball State. East Carolina is not a guaranteed win.
I like East Carolina.
Who knows what happens when they go to West Virginia? I don't like that West Virginia team, but an early road game with a new offense.
Tough place to play.
Yeah. So I had them 6-6.
I have them 6 or 7, which is under 7.5. So I guess I'm with you then.
Boston College over under set at 6. They have to replace a lot. They do get Dillon back. The calling card has been their defense, but they only return 3 starters. I just don't see this being better than 500 up there.
Their offensive line, I think, is going to be really good. They did lose all-ACC tight end. But like you said, their defense is kind of mix and match. I agree. I don't really know how you can win with kind of an average defense and an average offense. Like you said, Dillon's kind of their only guy. He was last year, and they weren't great. I know we liked the over last year, but I'm with you. I kind of like the under this year. I think they only win 5 games. That's kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I lean under as well. I had them at 6-6 though, so it's not a strong play for me.
What is it, 6.5 or 6?
It's 6 on the dot.
Man, that's a tough number to swallow.
And rounding out this division is Louisville. They bring in Satterfield from Appalachian State. Petrino can now ride his motorcycle whenever he wants. This team is going to be atrocious.
Yeah, I think you're going to see some enormous lines with them if you want to dabble in plus 45, plus 50 against Clemson. Be my guest.
I believe week 1 they are only 20-point underdogs to Notre Dame. That could be one where you could jump on them early because those lines are going to get high.
To me, that's telling. I didn't know that, actually. That's telling. Is Notre Dame that bad that they're only giving 20 to Louisville? Louisville's going to be atrocious.
They have to replace a lot offensively, but I can't see Louisville putting up a ton of points.
Yeah, I don't see them stopping anybody either.
So we both have Clemson coming out of this side of the division. The other side of the division I found very, very intriguing. I'd like to get your thoughts.
I could see 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 teams competing for this. I think think a lot of people have Miami as the kind of de facto team to win, and that's, their defense is going to be really good. Kind of always is really good. I still worry about their offense. They already have a quarterback issue. It looks like Martell got snubbed as the starter, and now he's pouting about it. So, turmoil to me this early in the season is not a good thing. I like that they sort of went in a new direction with the coach. I like Diaz a lot. I think he's going to be good in the future. But I have the Cavaliers of Virginia winning the Coastal.
I also do not have Miami winning the Coastal.
Oh, you got the Hokies, don't you?
But I do have the Hokies. I'm a sucker for the Hokies.
We can talk about the Hokies first if you would like. I would like to hear your
Well,
thoughts.
I'll piggyback on your Miami thoughts. I agree. I like Diaz coming in. They bring in Danny Enos to run the offense. I think that's going to be a work in progress. The schedule is favorable, though. They do get both two teams at home, Virginia and Virginia Tech.
Does that matter, though? Does home matter for them? I don't think it does.
I think it does if they're good, but I can't see that crowd getting that hyped for Virginia or Virginia Tech coming in.
Yeah.
Maybe Florida or Florida State. Their defense should be pretty good. They're going to put a ton of pressure on teams.
Oh, sure.
They're going to create.
Their defense athletically is unbelievable.
They're going to create turnovers as long as the offense isn't atrocious. I actually have them 10-2.
Interesting. Wow, I had them at 8-4 just because I think they're going to lose some shitty games like they always do.
Interesting.
I just think that just late in the year, once we hit that October 1st, if they've already dropped 2 games or something. We saw it last year where they were at no business. They were losing games at home to, Wake.
Yeah, you're right. They'd have to lose to a bad team because this is the way they last 6 games go.
Really balanced. Their defense was really good last year. And I think they have the best quarterback in this in the Coastal. Perkins is really good. So I just think when you have coach, quarterback, and then something else that, especially in a weak side, you're kind of the default winner to me.
My biggest worry with them is they rely so much on Perkins.
Yeah.
Their defense should be really, really good, though.
Yeah, I think their running back last year had 1,010. I think he could be good again. They have a receiver's name I can't pronounce. It's like Zacchaeus. He had 1,000 yards and 10 last year. So I think if those guys if they get them the ball more, I think their offense can even take a step forward. So just the combo offense-defense for me.
So I have them 9-3, finished the ACC at 6-2. But my other team in the Commonwealth, Bud Foster's last year, I think Fuente's under some pressure to get this turned around.
Yeah.
I like their wide receivers. A favorable schedule, no Clemson, no Florida State. Out-of-conference schedule, fairly easy with Furman, Rhode Island, and Old Dominion, despite losing to ODU last year. And they had a ton of injuries and turnover on the defense last year.
Yep.
I think that gets cleaned up. And I have them going 10-2, with the win over Miami being the difference to represent this side of the division.
You're right. Ton of injuries last year. And maybe that did contribute, but their defense was awful last year. I'm a Bud Foster fan. I know you can only do so much with what you're working with, but they were really bad. I still have questions about them up front. I'm not sure their defensive line is great. But really, I don't believe in their offense. I know the kid came in, Willis came in for when Josh Jackson got hurt, and I was not a Josh Jackson fan, and Willis put up some good numbers. I just don't believe in that offense for a full year. I don't believe in them to move the ball. I don't believe in them to run the ball. So maybe it's just because Virginia Tech is different than what I'm used to. I watched a bunch of their games last year. They just weren't. Defensively was atrocious, which is their calling card. Special teams was average, which was their calling card. And the buzz this year, just in the local papers, is that camp wasn't going well, preseason isn't going well. And I don't know if the Post is just Virginia biased and Maryland biased, but everything I was reading was bad for Va Tech.
Interesting.
Now, that's just one guy doing his little sports section, C15 column. But he was really high on Maryland, actually. Like the juice that they were bringing. And he said Virginia Tech was almost the opposite.
The 3 over-unders here, Miami 8.5, Virginia Tech 8, Virginia 7.5.
I think they're all pretty good numbers. My lean would be Virginia over, obviously, after just saying all that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I lean, obviously, the Virginia Tech over, but I could understand where you're coming from. And I lean Miami over, but that quarterback situation is a concern.
Yeah, I feel like Miami burns us when we get behind them, and I think Diaz needs a full year to get in there and really clamp down.
I like that. I like Virginia over 7.5. The next team I have is Duke. Our boy Cutcliffe has to replace a lot, but it seems like he overachieves no matter what roster he's given.
I have Duke next as well. I agree. Daniel Jones is going to be hard to replace. A place like Duke, you can't just replace a quarterback that was a really good player in college. Their weapons are going to be a little bit more unknown as well. But like you said, when you have a guy like Cutcliffe, I think it's not like they're going to win this side or anything. I just think they could win 6 or 7 games. I worry more about their defense. I thought last year they were good, not great, and they lost a bunch of guys. So that's where I would worry. But I think they're going to be the Duke we know and love, the team that's sort of middling, but late in the year you pick a spot and they really deliver for you.
That's the note I have starred, is there's going to be some great live dog plays for them.
We'll get to see the quarterback situation for 4 or 5 weeks, see how that kind of progresses. I expect there to be some early struggles, but, we'll see.
And they're going to get chances late in the year. Notre Dame at home, Syracuse at home, at Wake, and Miami at home.
I mean, I already have the Syracuse and the Miami games starred because those are the games that they fight to win.
So I have them 6-6, so I think the 5.5 over-under is a good number.
Yeah.
I have North Carolina coming in next.
I have Pitt and North Carolina kind of the same. I have them interchangeable. I have them no different, really.
Yeah, I have them both 5-7.
Yeah, exactly.
Carolina brings back Mac Brown. I thought maybe late in the year there would be some spots similar to Duke as they get accustomed to Mac, where they could be a dog that you want to back. But their schedule early on is pretty bad. And I could see them, similar to what we said about Florida State, that they could go awry.
Yeah, I've seen a couple articles where Mac Brown's going to kind of come in there and try to throw the ball around the lot. I'm not sure that's probably the best way to attack this. I would think the opposite, actually, for a young team that's going to be playing a tough early schedule. I do like their defense. I liked their defensive coordinator hire. I think he's from Army, and Army's defense has been good the last few years. So
Jay Bateman.
If you can kind of put up with defense at Army, I think you're going to be I think that's a good hire. We'll see how that progresses with the talent they have, but just even that energy, a guy from Army, I think is going to win them a couple games.
Yeah, I have them 5-7. I also have Pitt 5-7. Pitts has to replace a lot.
Yeah, I hate Pitt always.
They're 4 offensive linemen, 2 running backs. The schedule's not easy. I think Pat Narduzzi's the biggest clown in college football. He says that the offense is going to try and play quicker, but they have 0 weapons, so I don't know what the hell he's thinking. I have them under the total of 6.
So do I. I have them winning 4 games. They'll probably win a game that really pisses me off that they shouldn't win, but if you're picking the least talented team in the entire ACC, I think Louisville has more talent than them.
The only game I will root for them is when they host UCF on September 21st, And I think there'll be a live dog as UCF will be coming off a Stanford game in which they host.
I mean, that's a Pitt special right there.
And then
They've
I
done
think
it before.
I have Georgia Tech winning one game
Well,
in
yeah.
an absolutely atrocious situation for Jeff Collins to walk into.
Yeah, I mean, you're at an academic school in the first part, and now you're basically going from one of the 5 triple option teams having to redo the entire roster. There isn't a worse situation than that.
The only game I have them winning is against the Citadel.
What's the line? Is Citadel a live dog?
It might be.
Yeah, I have them last. I didn't even put a win thing next to them because I'm not sure they are going to win.
Their over-under is 4.
Oh, wow. Why is that so high?
I have no idea.
Am I missing something? I guess they're expecting them to fight against, like, BC. I don't know.
So my favorite picks
Boy, I kind of like that under a lot.
are NC State under, Wake over, Virginia over, and Pitt and Georgia Tech under.
I would agree with all those. This conference, I have more picks than any other.
Same here. Are all 5 of those officials?
Yeah.
All right. If we're staying in alphabetical order, you going to the Big 12 or the Big 10?
Let's go Big Ten. Let's go to your country.
Your overall thoughts?
Not terribly different from years past. I don't see a lot of upheaval, a lot of change. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to do with Ohio State, and I can't figure it out. So, if you want to start on that east side, I have Michigan winning.
Let's start with Ohio State. We'll start with Michigan. Over under 10. 1999 was the last time they finished in the top 5. They bring in Josh Gaddis, new offensive coordinator, was at Bama, was with James Franklin at Penn State prior. He's going to try and get Shea Patterson on track. They ran the ball 62% of the time last year. They're not going to be tested until October, I don't think.
No, if you look at schedules, like their schedule is very favorable.
There is some defensive turnover. And the other question I have is Harbaugh going to intervene if it's not going well early?
Probably. It's a fair question. And this is kind of just me baking on Shea Patterson taking a leap. I think he does get a little bit better. They did lose some key personnel on defense, but looking at some of the last 2 years recruiting classes, their defense should be pretty well stocked again. For me, I'm not a huge Jim Harbaugh guy, but just the stability with Urban leaving and that whole situation, I think, has to account for something. So that's why it's sort of a default. Ohio State's roster is really talented, but sort of a default Michigan pick. I think they finally get over the hump this year.
I have them 10-2 among some other teams, as you'll find out.
I could not decide what I have them. I went through game by game. I think they start off. I think they're undefeated when they go to Penn State, and that's sort of the game I was unsure about. And then the Ohio State game. So I either have them 11-1 or 10-2.
Those were exactly the 2 games I was not sure either, and I had them both as losses.
I just can't imagine that he never beats freaking Ohio State. Is that even possible?
I had a tough time writing a W there.
Jesus Christ. I sort of gave Penn State the win just because I try to find they're not going undefeated. God, they can't not beat Ohio State. I mean, if he doesn't beat Ohio State, does he survive?
It'll be interesting with Patterson graduating. It's almost a revamp of the offense, bringing another quarterback in.
Oh my God, I can't imagine. So you've talked me into this. I have him losing at Penn State. I have him beating Ohio State.
Speaking of Ohio State, I also have them 10-2, but I could see this going a million different ways.
Yeah, that's my exact thought was boy, I really like the talent, but there's a lot of newness. That with pretty high expectations still. I've seen a lot of people picking them to win the Big Ten, maybe make it to the 4. New coach, sort of, new quarterback. I don't know. I just kind of see the 9 wins happening is kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, the O-line loses 4 starters. As you mentioned, they're breaking in Fields. I don't think anybody really knows what to expect out of Fields.
He was really good in high school, but, I don't know. He's a good player. I don't want to say he's not a good player, but not sure he's as good of a thrower as people think he is.
They do return 9 defensive starters, but that defense wasn't great last year.
No, it was terrible. Not great. It was fucking atrocious.
I think there's spots early to go against them as big favorites as they try and break Fields in. I think Dobbins is going to get a lot of touches early.
Oh, yeah.
The schedule's not very difficult. The first 5, Florida Atlantic and Cincinnati at home, a trip to Indiana, Miami, Ohio at home. They do go to Nebraska, but we could get to them later. Who knows what to expect there. And then Michigan State should be the first huge test, October 5th.
Yeah, like you, a lot of people are high in Nebraska. I have them being undefeated for that game. I think they win that game. I think they lose to Michigan State. People are down on Michigan State. I think they're going to be a little bit better than people think. I think it's a tough little stretch with Michigan State, then at Northwestern, who could be scrappy. Then they end the year with Penn State, Michigan. If they lose one of those Michigan State, that early game, and it kind of knocks them out of that national conversation, I don't think it's hard to fathom them dropping those last 2 games, too.
I agree with you on that point. You mentioned that Northwestern game. That's a Friday night game at Northwestern.
Yep.
I had them 10-2.
That's what I had. Or 9-3. Kind of coin flippy.
It sounds homerish. I have them losing to Penn State, but I couldn't really find a loss anywhere else. But I do agree with you that if they drop one early, it could go sideways.
Fields is a thick kid, but his first year actually playing, he's going to look to run. If he gets dinged, then what?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's next?
Absolutely.
So that's kind of where I'm at. I had him losing 3. One of them just the Penn State one. I wasn't really sure, but I'm leaning towards 9.
I had them beating Michigan, so I didn't think they were going to beat Penn State and Michigan consecutive weeks.
Right.
Speaking of Penn State, I did not want to be a homer at all, but I couldn't find losses.
Well, this is your team, so you get the majority of the time here. I
don't have a ton to say. I think their defense is going to be the second best in the Big Ten behind Michigan State. It's really going to come down to Sean Clifford, the quarterback, and how good the offense is.
I have them at 9-3.
That's what I originally intended to put them. 9-3.
I have a couple of, actually, it could be 8-4, but I gave them a win. I think they're going to lose at Michigan State.
I have that as a loss, and I have at Iowa as a loss.
At Iowa, and then the Ohio State game is kind of a coin flip one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the other dangerous game is, after Iowa, Michigan State, they go at Row the Boat.
Yes.
At Row the Boat could be a tough one.
I did have that. That was another hesitation.
Yeah. Where that other loss comes from me is I gave them the Ohio State win, but I think Row the Boat could be. They're really beat up after 3 weeks. If those 3 weeks don't go well, then they could be really flat.
I agree. They do get a week off in between Michigan State and Minnesota. That was the only reason I gave them the win at Minnesota.
Yeah. It's an interesting spot. They had one of the more intriguing middle schedules of anybody that we looked at.
So I have them also at 10-2 and 7-2 in the conference.
Interesting. So Big Ten East really popping for you.
Oh, wait till you hear this. I have a 4th team at 10-2.
Sparty.
And I have the Spartans winning this side of the division.
Whoa! Wow, let's hear it.
all the starters back on the offensive line. I know the offense wasn't great with it last year, but I do like the Lewerke kid. They promote their quarterback coach to offensive coordinator. D'Antonio always seems to bounce back after a mediocre year. The early season schedule isn't very difficult. I think they get off to a roll early. And that defense, I think they're going to be the best in the Big Ten and one of the better defenses in the country.
I would agree. I love a lot about them. I think they do have the best defense in the Big Ten by a good amount, actually. They have two of my favorite safety prospects in the country, and they're on the same team. I think they're both going to be really good NFL players. But, God, I just worry about the quarterback. Can he stay healthy? Can he actually be good? Especially when you're talking about road trips in the middle of the schedule that are down on Wisconsin, but going to Madison isn't an easy place to play.
I have that as a loss.
So going to Ohio State, not going to be easy. So there's just stuff like that. 10-2 is ambitious, I think, with that offense. But,
well, that 3-game stretch is going to define the year. At Ohio State, at Wisconsin, home to Penn State.
Yeah. I actually had them at 8-4, so you're higher than I am.
Yeah, I had them losing at Wisconsin and at Michigan.
Yep.
But that 3-game stretch will prohibit me from calling this as an over.
Right, exactly.
Let's hear about Maryland.
Well, they've already lost their best playmaker for the year to a torn ACL, so we're kind of just riding the theme of the last 2 years. It's unbelievable how many injuries this team has had. They do have a new strength coach after the scandal, so maybe that will turn the tide. Look, they got some athletes. That's kind of what they are. They need to stay healthy. McFarland's a home run hitter at running back. You saw last year, he basically beat Ohio State by himself, essentially. Their schedule is not great. They're going to have to win the games that they're supposed to win. I don't think they're ready yet to win that 5 or 6. But if you're giving me an over under 3.5, I'm tempted to go over just because I really like some of their athletes.
I have them 5-7, so I definitely lean the over.
2 shockers in a row.
I think they start the year 4-1.
Yeah, the beginning of the year is somewhat easy. I think Loxley is good for him. He can get his feet under himself as a head coach. I thought he did pretty well at Alabama the last couple of years. Quarterback's an issue. They do have some really good receivers, really good tight end. I think you're going to see the tight end be used a lot more this year, finally. Defensively, they're going to suck. That's just kind of is what it is. They have a couple of good players in the secondary, but they're going to give up 30 a game. So, they're going to have to outscore some people. That is sort of the problem in taking the over here.
Yeah, I mean, they have to get off to a good start. The Syracuse and Temple games, I have them both as wins.
Yeah.
They have to win both of those or you're screwed early because those last 5 games are pretty brutal. At Minnesota, Michigan, at Ohio State, Nebraska, at Michigan State. I don't see them winning any of those.
Those are all losses. To me, it came down to the Temple game, and that was just too. I think they'll win that game, but it's just too much of a coin flip for me to actually like it.
They got beat 35-14 by Temple. I thought there would be some revenge this year.
Definitely a revenge spot. Just too many unknowns. I like where they're going, but I think I need to see a year of Loxley kind of get some guys in there before I jump on this. I think next year when the over-under is 4, then I'll be on the over.
I have nothing really to say about Indiana. I have them 6-6. Their over-under is 6.5.
I have a lean to the under. Not strong. I just don't. Looking at their schedule, I don't see 7 wins.
Yeah, I also lean under. And then I have Rutgers at 2-10. They're going to be Georgia Tech like bad.
Yeah, I don't. What's new? I mean,
their over-under is 3, and I lean under.
Mohamed Sanu is not walking through that door.
So I have Sparty representing this side of the division.
I have the Wolverines.
Moving to the West, all kinds of intrigue around Scott Frost in Nebraska. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Over under set at 8.5.
Look, I like Scott Frost, and I think Nebraska college football is good when Nebraska is good. It's just you like to see the traditional teams be good. I just don't. It seems like a huge leap in 1 year to all of a sudden be really good. I mean, I would define them as scrappy last year, and it's always the same issue for me. It's the quarterback. I'm not sure how you're going to win 9 games when your quarterback is, I'll give him average, I guess. I don't know. I don't love Martinez. I just don't like him.
I agree on everything. I wanted to say 8-4, but I couldn't find a fourth loss. They probably lose a game that they shouldn't. So
their first 4 games might be the easiest in the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think it's week 5 they play Ohio State.
Correct.
And then they play Northwestern.
Yes.
And then they play at Minnesota.
Yes, I have Ohio State and Minnesota as losses, and I had Iowa as a loss at the end of the year. But they probably trip up either Indiana at Purdue, Wisconsin home, or at Maryland. They probably lose one of those. I don't think they'll win 4 in a row.
I had at Purdue as a loss.
Okay.
Just because I just think that's on the road. If your quarterback can't throw the ball, I think that's what happens.
Yeah. They do have some things going for them. Second worst turnover in the conference last year. Their field position was one of the worst in college football. Those two have to even out. They lost 5 games by 5 points or less. You would think just if those go back to the norm, they should win 1 or 2 more games.
My biggest reason for liking the under is that it's the 4th most public bet over. So, really, I don't even need to see anything else.
Yeah, I agree. I would lean under. Who do you have winning this side?
I have the Hawkeyes of Iowa winning this side.
Interesting. Let's go to Iowa then.
I'm assuming you do not, based on that reaction.
I have Wisconsin.
Interesting. I have Wisconsin second, so not that far off. I usually am a pretty blind Iowa hater. Maybe it's just because my dad's a fan, but it's just their schedule is usually so easy that I can't stand them. I like their stability at quarterback. I think Stanley can play. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. And their defense is going to be really good. I think their defense is going to carry them. There's a couple trip-up spots early, but the theme, again, is they get their tough games earlier where I think everyone will be healthy. At Iowa State, at Michigan, and then home to Penn State, I think is kind of at Northwestern, at Wisconsin are trickier, but not as tough. But I think they can win those games late with their defense. And I like the quarterback a lot. Like I said, I just think they have the 2 keys, and we'll be on the Kirk Ferentz train come October as a country.
I like the point you made about their health. The reason I had Wisconsin, now that I'm looking at their schedule, was their tough games are all on the road. At Michigan, in conference anyway. At Michigan, at Northwestern, at Wisconsin, at Nebraska.
That's a fair point.
So I had them 8-4. But if their run game improves from last year, they can control the clock and play Iowa football. There's no doubt they could win this side of the division.
Yeah, we're not that different. I have them at 9-3, so I just don't see this division being having a dominant team. So I think 9-3 is good enough on this side.
They're over under 7.5. I would lean over, but I don't love it.
Well, I would agree. I mean, I like it. Love on this side would be tough with these top teams, quote unquote top teams.
So my pick, Wisconsin. I like that they have Taylor back. They don't have much stability at the quarterback, which was a worry.
What's new?
They avoid.
They have addition by subtraction at quarterback, though.
Yeah, they avoid Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State.
Yeah.
Actually, they do that. They play those 3.
They don't avoid them.
They do not avoid them. So maybe Maybe Iowa is the play on this side.
I don't dislike Wisconsin. I don't think their defense is going to be as good this year. They lost 2 pretty good linebackers. And like you said, offensively, I don't know. Besides Taylor, what do they have? Usually when you see college teams with the one running back that kind of does everything, they might get off to a good start, but it eventually catches up with them. And I kind of see this Wisconsin team being an exact example of that. I had them at 8-4.
Yeah, I had them 9-3. I had losses to Michigan and Ohio State at Nebraska. I had them beating Michigan State.
Yeah, I have them losing that.
So that was my pick. Their over-under is 8. Again, not a strong field.
Nope, definitely not for me.
I had Northwestern 6-6. Their over-under is 6.5.
God, I can't figure this team out. I had them in a tie, basically, with Nebraska and Minnesota. This is the part of the conference that's very hard for me to figure out. They all have flaws, and none of them have really strengths, per se. I like Northwestern. I think they're kind of going to be like Duke, where you can really pick spots, and they're going to win some games. But other than that, I don't know.
This is a stat that I could not believe. I didn't fact check, but I heard this on a different podcast that they're 15-1 in their past 16 regular season Big Ten games.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
But they do have to replace a lot, including the quarterback. The games that they should lose, they win. The games that they win, they should win, they lose.
Yeah, exactly. And if we're comparing them to other teams, I already said I don't like Nebraska's quarterback. That's kind of why I think Minnesota I have them after Wisconsin, just because they have a little bit of stability at quarterback. It's the first time that Row the Boat will have a second-year quarterback coming back. And their defense was awful last year in Minnesota, so I think that can only improve. At this point in the conference, I was just comparing units head-to-head, and Minnesota just seems a little better to me.
Let me read the schedule to you now that I'm reading it over another time. South Dakota State, at Fresno State, Georgia Southern, at Purdue, which could be a little tricky.
Yeah.
But then they get Illinois, Nebraska at home, at Rutgers, Maryland at home.
Yeah, it's really easy.
I mean, 8-0 is not like, it wouldn't be shocking to me.
Yeah, when you say that, I think Purdue might be the loss.
Yeah, I have that as a loss as well, but that's the only loss I have in that stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very fathomable, yeah.
Now, the end of the season's not easy with Penn State at Iowa, at Northwestern, Wisconsin. So they have to win early if you're going to take the over.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of when I was talking about schedules, this is the type of schedule I don't like, because they're just going to get pounded at the end of the year. But, yeah, they're going to be good for a while.
I have Purdue next, and I have them falling off a cliff.
Well, yeah, Purdue's next by default, just because Illinois. Although I think Illinois's got some things cooking.
The only wins I have on Purdue's schedule are home against Minnesota, home against Illinois, and home against Maryland.
And even that Minnesota one is sort of like you're just giving them that because, you know?
Yeah.
But I have their over-under at 7, and I don't really get how it's not 5 or 4.5.
This is probably my favorite under in the country.
Is it? I almost feel like I'm being tricked, though.
I'll double check again when this pod is over, but I saw 7 in 2 spots.
To me, if that's what it is, and I have a 7 written down, so you must be right. I mean, they're losing their quarterback. They lost 3 starting linemen. This has to be because they beat Ohio State last year, right?
They have one of the more electrifying players in the country with Rondale Moore, but after that...
Yeah, he's a receiver. Who cares?
Their offense last year...
Colorado has a good receiver, too. They're going to win 2 games.
Their offense last year was ranked 124th, and they have to replace 8 starters.
Purdue's defense, I think, returns everyone, but they were terrible last year.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll improve. I mean, they should improve a little bit, but if you're counting on Purdue's defense to carry you, I'm not sure. I don't get it.
No, I agree. Brahm's really going to have to outcoach what he did last year. I do too.
But I think we're kind of hanging our hats on Ohio State win last year and not looking at this year.
I have Illinois at 3-9 without a win in the Big Ten. I mean, it's tough to say that I do think that they're improving, but
I say they're improving. Just I took a look at some of the recruiting classes, and they did get a couple 4-star kids. Which, if you win one game, that's kind of hard to do. So, giving them credit for that.
The only play I really like is Purdue under in this Big Ten.
Let me go through my things in the Big Ten West. I lean Nebraska under. Not sure what you think about that.
I lean too.
Love Purdue under. And I had a little lean to Minnesota over, but that one's probably too scary at the end of the year.
Yeah, the only one I really like is Purdue.
Agreed. Let's just roll with that one then.
All right, I have Michigan State beating Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship.
I have Michigan beating Iowa.
Big 12.
I hate the Big 12, so I will make this a little faster. But I have Oklahoma winning just because quarterback coach, I think, is better than everybody else. I wanted to like Texas. There's some big game stats, especially when they're favorites, that really make me hesitate. I think Ellinger has a really good year. If he can stay healthy, I think he is in the Heisman combo. But to me, the stability of Jalen Hurts, I'm not a huge Jalen Hurts guy, but I just think in that offense with Lincoln Riley, they're going to be very similar to what they always have been. Just kind of by default, addition by subtraction with the defensive coordinator, goes to Stoops, finally clearing out of the closet. I think they win by a game here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't really want to like them. I don't like Hurts either. I love Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
They do have to replace a lot of the offensive linemen. Their early season schedule, they're not playing very good defenses, so Hurts should be able to settle in. They brought in Alex Grinch for the defense. The defensive numbers were really, really bad last year.
That's what I mean. It can only be better, right? Like, that has to get better. So,
yeah, I have them 10-2. Their over-under's 10.5.
I have them 10-2 as well.
You mentioned Texas. Their over-under's 9.5. Expectations are sky high. I'm not on Texas this year.
Yeah, I think those expectations hurt them. I like them more in the dog spot. If we come to a spot when they're a little bit of an underdog, like I said, I like Ellinger. I just I don't think they're over that hump yet. And there's some games on their schedule that if they lose to LSU, I think the whole season could go awry.
What if you're making that line week 2 in the Cotton Bowl, or at home?
Is it at home or is it? It's probably Dallas.
No, it's at home.
Is it really?
In Austin.
Wow.
Are they a home dog?
Yeah, probably by 1 or 2. I think LSU -2.
Yeah, I have that as a loss too, but the stats with Herman as a dog are real.
I know. I hate his stats as a favorite are real too. So it's sort of
yeah, you're right. It probably evens out.
If that game is a field goal either way, you could have the stats are really strong for both sides. And I like the Burrow kid for LSU, so we'll see where that one goes. But there's some other weird games, like Oklahoma obviously is a big game, but I think at TCU, at Ohio, Iowa State, at Baylor, 3 of the last 4 weeks are tough. I like all 3 of those teams more than a lot of people do, probably.
I have them 9-3, and I think that's the best they could probably do.
Totally agree. I think I would write them at 8-4 if you forced me.
I think I agree. I think they're getting way too much hype over that Georgia bowl game when Georgia did not care at all.
We put so much stock into these meaningless games. It's unbelievable.
So their over-under's 9.5, and I like the under.
I would lean under as well.
The team I actually have going to the Big 12 championship game to face Oklahoma is our Iowa State Cyclones.
I was hoping you said that. So do I.
They get their quarterback back. They do have to replace Montgomery, who was one of my favorite players in college football last year.
He was awesome, but that's a replaceable position.
They get all their offensive linemen back, and the schedule is favorable. And they have one of my favorite coaches in college football.
Then they have the best home fan base ever.
I agree.
Not just in college football, literally in the history of sports.
I have them 10-2 with losses at Baylor and at Oklahoma.
I can already see we're on the same page about Baylor, too. I have the exact same thing.
And I do think I have it starred week 3, UL Monroe. Not a live dog, but a dog that I think we consider in a sandwich spot with Iowa and Baylor.
What's that line? Do you already have an early look ahead?
It has to be probably 24.
Interesting. I'm going to write that down just so we remember here.
Next on my list, I have TCU, Baylor, and OK State with the same record at 8-4.
I had Texas third. I have Baylor, TCU, Okie State. So the same thing. I like Rule and Baylor. I think their offense is going to be good this year.
I love Matt Rule. They only forced 9 turnovers last year. They're probably going to be favored in 6 or 7 games. If they get anything out of the trenches this year, 9 wins is very doable.
I think it's definitely doable. Their defense is not going to be good, as you just said. Only 9. There's a couple games. Iowa State, I think that's a big game for them. If they can win that game, they could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They could be 8-0. Because Oklahoma State what's that line going to be? That's going to be under a touchdown, I think.
Yeah, I would say 6. Oklahoma State.
Then they get West Virginia at home. They should win that game on Halloween. Then they go to TCU, which will be a big game. Yeah, I can see them winning 9 games.
Yeah, I have them 8-4. They're over under 7.5. I lean over. I don't know if I can pull the trigger though.
I am a stay away just because the at TCU, Oklahoma, Texas to end the year. I don't love the backload like that. So I would agree. I like them 8 or 9 wins, but it's a little scary if something goes wrong.
I have Oklahoma State also at 8-4, and I think I'm probably 1 win too high. They're over under 7.5, so I think it's either 7 or 8 wins. So good number. They bring in a new offensive coordinator. I don't think they've decided on a quarterback and may run a 2-quarterback system.
They have not, as of yesterday.
They have no discipline with a ton of penalties last year. Blew a couple leads. Their defense, rush defense, is atrocious. But their schedule is fairly easy.
The schedule's the only reason I have them winning 7 games. If they had a hard schedule, I think they'd be a 5-win team.
Yeah,
They do nothing. Stat-wise, they're going to look better than they are. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But the 2 quarterbacks never works. Gundy will figure something out mid-season, but at that point, it's too late.
Yeah, I would agree. Then I had TCU, who has to get better quarterback play than they did last year.
If TCU can stay healthy, I feel like they could be a sneaky team here, right? Usually Gary Patterson, if you go back and look, teams bounce back under him pretty well. They had a bad year last year. The last 2 times they had bad years, they bounced back in a big way the next year. I'm not saying they're going to win 9 games, but I don't know. If they somewhat stay healthy, I think they could win 7 or 8 games.
I have it, same thing. They're over under 7.5. You mentioned injuries.
That's a great number.
You mentioned injuries. I found this amusing that they had to cancel the spring game because they had too many guys hurt.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, throw that out the window, man. How does that happen?
I have not a clue.
Every year, they have, like, 6 really important guys that have the most, like, broken forearm or, like, amputated leg. I don't get it.
I had Texas Tech next. We're bringing in the Utah State coach to replace Kingsbury.
Yep.
I have them 6-6, but I could see it go 5-7.
I have 5, but it's the same thing.
6.5 over under. I lean under.
I would lean under as well.
Do you feel confident about it though?
I'm not sure. I think I need to see. I need to read some more about what they're going to do offensively. If they're going to carry the same system, or if they're totally changing. When I read their little preview, it sounded like it was going to be a combination, which would make me lean more under.
I had Kansas State next. No more of our Bill Snyder.
I left this preview blank just as in memory.
I like that. They do bring Kleiman in. I do like the hire. I think there's spots. I think they're similar to Duke, where there's going to be some live dog spots.
Later in the year, maybe, but
Yep.
I need a good 2 months of not talking about them before I get over it.
Their over-under is 5.5. I think it's a fairly good number.
Yeah, probably. I think I would lean under if I had to.
Correct. West Virginia, I have next. Their over-under is 5.
I like the under.
I love the under.
They'll beat somebody at home, but they suck.
Holgerson goes to Houston. They bring Neil Brown from Troy in. I do like Neil Brown, but he's a couple years away.
They are going to be so bad.
Yeah. Isn't that out of conference?
Can't lose head coach and really good quarterback at a place like West Virginia and be good the next year. It just doesn't happen.
No, I have them 3-9. I love the under.
Me too.
And then Kansas. Good luck, Les Miles.
Have you... I'm being halfway serious because this is sort of right up our alley. And I'm not a huge Les Miles guy. But can they... I think 4 wins is possible.
Where?
Well, Indiana State, right?
Yes.
Coastal.
Yes.
BC. West Virginia.
That BC game looks like it's a Friday game in BC.
Yeah, I mean, they're coming off Coastal, though.
Are they going to win 3 in a row?
I'm just asking the question.
I mean, yeah, the ceiling is 4 wins.
There's 2 wins at the beginning, and there might be 1 in those next 2, right? And then later in the year, you get K-State at home and Texas Tech at home. I'm just saying.
No, there's a possibility.
I'm just saying that something weird could happen late in the year in Lawrence.
I think it's more likely a push, if anything. But I can see where you're getting at.
Just one of those things that sometimes me and you like to get into. Something real smelly.
So I have Oklahoma, Iowa State, Big 12 championship, and I have Oklahoma beating them for the second time.
I do as well, unfortunately. I really wanted to put Matt Campbell in there. I just couldn't do it.
Under Texas 9.5 official.
Yeah.
Under West Virginia 5 official.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Pac-12 and save the best for last.
Ugh. I hate talking about the Pac-12. Shout out to Jake Sadlowski. Who gives a shit, really, you know?
Yeah, I do. I do think that, I guess it's the North. The Oregon side of the division is interesting.
All right, well, let's go to the North. I have Oregon winning just because I think they have the best quarterback by a lot on this side. It's interesting to me. Washington hasn't really got it going like I thought they would under Peterson. Kind of wonder where that's going the next 2 or 3 years. If he's just there, you know, living out his life or what. But I thought they were going to be better than they have been. You know, Cal's got a really good secondary, but they're going to struggle offensively, I think.
That's an
Stanford,
understatement.
I think, is going to be a little bit down. Wazoo losing Falk is going to hurt, and our Beavers are still on the mat. So, to me, Oregon is way better than this. A lot of teams, every other team on this side.
It's definitely Oregon's to lose. Let me ask you this: how big is the Oregon-Auburn game in Texas to open the year for the Pac-12?
I think it's huge for both teams individually, but yeah, you hit it on the head. It basically means everything for the Pac-12, whereas the SEC can survive. It's kind of one of those things where the committee's gonna, if they get beat and beat bad, the committee's gonna hold that against the Pac-12 for the rest of the year.
I think the offensive line for Oregon going against that defensive line for Auburn is going to be fantastic.
Be really fun.
I did not want to like Oregon going into it. I don't love Cristobal, but I somehow have them 11-1.
Yeah, how can you not? Where are the losses is what I kept asking myself.
I struggled. The only two games I struggled with were at Stanford and at Washington, and I have them splitting.
Yeah, I love Shaw. I think Stanford's going to be down this year. Just kind of... Washington is just... I think maybe it's because I hitched my wagon to last year and they sucked. I could see them winning both those games and it being scary, like Oregon hype is kind of what I see. I just don't think Washington and Stanford have the power to keep up with Oregon this year. If Oregon's offensive line wasn't so good, it would be a different story. But when you have a good quarterback and your offensive line's good in college, it's hard to beat somebody.
I didn't want to do this, but the over-under is 8.5. And
I like the over a lot.
I do too.
Like I was shocked it wasn't 9.5. Even 9.5, I think I'd like over.
Yeah, I mean, if they win that Auburn game, there's no reason, unless Herbert gets hurt, that they should not cover this over.
Right, exactly. That's my thoughts exactly. And I don't dislike them in that Auburn game.
No, I agree. I think
Auburn's going to be starting a true freshman, so, kind of should win that game.
I have Stanford and Washington finishing tied for second in this division.
I have Washington finishing second. Just I think their schedule's a little easier.
I have them with a better record, just the same conference record.
Yeah,
I have Washington 9-3.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have Stanford too.
I wanted to like Washington more than I can.
Yeah, I feel the same way I do.
I liked Eason when he was at Georgia, but I guess there's a reason he's not playing anymore.
He is Jake Browning 2.0.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, he looks good when there's not a game going on. If you watch him throw the ball, he looks good, but there's a reason, like you said, where Fromm's better than he is.
They've won 14 straight home games. They do get Oregon and Utah at home, and USC, and Washington State. So it sets up well for them. I wouldn't be shocked if they were there at the end competing with Oregon for this side of the division, but I don't see Eason being able to carry them all year.
I mean, it's kind of by default to me, at least. They do have a tough game at BYU. I don't think they're going to win all those home games, so...
No, I don't either.
Yeah, it's kind of just by default I have them kind of competing with Oregon because I just don't like Cal, Stanford, Wazoo.
Over-under's 9.5. I lean under, but that schedule prohibits me from making this a play.
I would lean under as well, but like you said, everything at home is kind of scary to bet against.
Stanford over-under 6.5. Probably the toughest schedule in the country.
It's probably rated at number 1. I think you're right.
It's either them or Texas A&M because I think A&M gets Clemson, Georgia, and Alabama.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And I really wanted to. I have them 7-5, and only because I think Shaw is going to overachieve somehow, some way.
Yeah, I mean I think he's the best coach in college football.
I love him.
I mean, he's not recruiting anybody, so their schedule, though, like you said, like the Oregon-Auburn game, I think their game against Northwestern is really scary to start the year.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with USC and UCF on deck.
Yeah, so
and Oregon.
Oregon is their 4th game, so that's kind of, and then they get a freebie at Oregon State, but then they play Washington.
Circle that Beavers game, as that's a dog spot for the Beavers.
I mean, if there was ever a monster sandwich game, that's kind of it. I don't think their defensive line is going to be as good as it was last year, and if that's kind of the staple of your team, that's a problem. Yeah, I think it's just too much to overcome. I have them at 6 wins.
Yeah, I love Shaw, and I think that he finds ways to win games. But would you be shocked if they started 1-5?
No, definitely not. I think they'll be able to make some ground up at the end with Jonah and Colorado, Wazoo. But,
yeah,
you know, it's not like the at Washington State, home to Cal or layup games. Shit, even UCLA's probably not a layup this year.
3 stats. Shaw is 9-17 against teams that finish with more than 9 wins in his career.
Wow, interesting.
4th most wins the last 10 years, behind only Saban, Dabo, and Urban. And he's 24-11 against the spread in conference play the last 4 years.
24-11 conference play. I'm writing that one down. I like that. There's going to be these first 5 weeks. One of those spreads is going to be big. It's probably going to be Oregon, but the spread's going to be big.
Yeah.
Maybe it's UCF actually. That's our spot.
I like UCF. I hate UCF. I hate all their fans. But this is the game they're going to get up for.
That's true.
They finally get somebody to come play them in their house.
Yeah, they're going to get a team that's down and road weary already.
Yep, you're going to hear a clamor for a week, and then they're going to go to the shitty Pitt Panthers and lose.
I'd sign up for that right now.
Washington State I have next at 8-4.
Wow, 8 wins.
I love Leach. I'm probably giving them one more win than they should have.
I've said this for 3 or 4 other teams. I have a hard time believing they're going to be that good after they lose such a good quarterback.
Yeah, they do. The kid they're bringing in was at Eastern Washington, and he threw to Cooper Kupp.
Wait, what? Hasn't Kupp been in the NFL for a while?
He's a 6th-year senior.
Oh, my God.
So this is like right up Leach's alley.
New defensive coordinator, too, I believe.
2nd year, I believe.
Oh, is it his 2nd year?
No, you're right. They had to replace Grinch. You're right.
Yeah. So, new coordinator, new quarterback.
Yeah. Those first 4 games, though, I have them 4-0. New Mexico State, Northern Colorado, Houston, although it'll be tricky, and UCLA at home.
I have them at 7 wins.
Yeah, I can see. I think that Houston game's a swing game.
Yeah, that's I have UCLA game as kind of a toss-up, too. I think UCLA is going to be okay.
And then you mentioned Cal. Their defense should be fantastic, especially
really
the secondary. Good. If they get anything out of the quarterback, they could shock some teams.
Yeah, I love Tedford. I love their defense. I wish they just had a kid that could throw the ball. Like you said, they will be one of my favorite teams to bet on this year.
Oh, absolutely.
They're going to be an against the spread monster.
Yeah, there's a couple games that I'm already looking forward to.
Yep.
And then I have our Beavers with 1 win.
God. Life was more fun when they were winning 5 games a year.
That it was. So over-unders, 8.5 Oregon, we like the over. Washington, 9.5, under lean. Wazoo was 8. I think that's a pretty good number. Stanford, 6.5, probably right around that number. Cal, 5.5, probably right around that number. And Oregon State, 2.5.
The only one I think I really like is Oregon.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's my 1 star in this conference.
Official at 8.5.
Yeah.
The other side, I have Utah coming out.
I have Utah as well. I was big on the Utes last year. I'm just going to continue with them this year. Their quarterback situation, the injury really got me last year, but I think their defense is going to be even better this year. And I think they're the one team in this whole conference that kind of brings that hit you in the mouth mentality, and nobody else is really used to that. So I think that's going to serve them well this year.
I'm with you. That first game, though, against BYU,
100%.
I mean, it's not going to change the difference for the conference, but I think it's a big game as far as their playoff hopes go.
1,000,000%. For their playoff hopes, I almost think it's a must-win. If not, they have to run the table.
I have them 10-2. I have them losing at Washington, and I think this is where Cal gets somebody.
Interesting.
I had them losing 2 in a row.
I have them losing at BYU and at Washington.
Okay.
That Holy War game is tough at BYU.
The over-under's 9.
If they win, I would lean over. I think they have a chance to really be in that conversation if they beat BYU, the national conversation. Because I think they beat USC 3 weeks later, I think. And
yep.
They don't really play a big game until, like you mentioned, the Cal game before Washington is the trip-up spot.
Is this an overplay?
God.
Even if they drop that BYU game, at the worst, you push at 9.
I mean, it's not like the Washington game is an auto loss either. It's not like Washington's a juggernaut.
Yeah.
I think so. It's kind of the injuries would be the only thing that gets me because maybe the high expectations could get them, but they just play that really physical style of football. There are a lot of starters back on offense. I love Huntley and Moss. Boy, if they stay healthy, yeah, I'm over. I think I'm over anyway.
All right. I have USC next, which this could go. This is like Ohio State to me. This could go a million different ways.
I've seen a lot of people saying USC is going to be really good now. All of a sudden, is an in vogue pick.
I mean, that beginning part of the schedule, Fresno State, Stanford, at BYU, Utah, at Washington, at Notre Dame, is tricky. I have them going 3-3 during that stretch, but if they go 4-2 or 5-1, there's no reason they can't make a run.
They'll beat Fresno. Stanford's a toss-up. BYU, I would lean BYU. Utah beats them. Washington beats them. At Notre Dame, I would assume Notre Dame's a pretty good favorite there.
Yeah, I had 3-3. I had them losing BYU, Utah, and Notre Dame.
Boy, they're at Cal.
That's yeah.
I could see them going 6-6. I mean,
no. If you said they were going to go 10-2, or if you said they were going 4-8, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, let's just say they're going to lose one of the Stanford BYU games, right?
Stanford, yes.
Utah.
I think they lose Utah, one of the Utah-Washington games.
So even if we split those, okay, so at Notre Dame.
I have it as a loss. I have them 3-3 to start the year.
And then Oregon.
You're right. They're probably not going 5-1 to end the year.
At Cal.
I had Oregon as a loss, but I could see them losing at either Arizona State or at Cal.
I think 8 is kind of their ceiling.
Yeah, I agree.
And those are giving them 50-50 games versus not losing back-to-back. 6-6 is in play.
It's scary to give 50-50 games to Clay Helton.
Exactly. It's not like USC is one of those teams like Duke that's sitting there 4-4 fighting with a team.
Yeah.
They're going to roll over.
And they're going to a Texas Tech-style offense.
Oh, great.
So instituting that in the beginning of the year with that schedule, 3-3 might be generous.
I mean, look, they have more talent than anybody on this side. I mean, I think Utah has sneaky talent. There's going to be some guys drafted in the first 2 rounds, but top to bottom, there's no one more talented. It's the same old story.
Yeah. I would lean under, but who knows?
No, I'm not touching it, but be damned if I'm surprised if they're 6-6 come 6 months from now.
I have them 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6. 6-6 The next three teams to me were a toss-up. Arizona over under 6.5. Arizona State over under 7. UCLA over under 6.
Yeah, I think UCLA is going to be decent. I think that 6 number shows that Arizona burned us last year, so I didn't want to research them at all. And I think Arizona State might take a little step back. I think they had that first-year Herm Edwards juice. I wouldn't be shocked if they only won 6 games, but I think the number's good.
Yeah, I had them more like 5 wins, but I don't have any confidence either way.
No, it's that bottom of the division where they just trade wins. It's kind of hard to pick a season total with those 3.
And Colorado over under 4 wins. I like the
They'll
under.
have a first-round pick, but they're going to be bad.
I like the under. I don't know how they get to 3.
They're going to be really bad, but he's going to be top 12 pick, probably top 15 pick.
The wide receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree. Do you lean either or like either way?
No, I don't. I would lean under, but I don't love it.
Okay. So the plays in this one: Utah over 9 and Oregon over 8.5.
Like it.
And to the NFL, I have Oregon, Utah winning the Pac-12.
Where did my I already moved on the sheets. I have Utah winning over Oregon as well.
SEC. Let's go to the East, which should not be that interesting. I have Georgia in a runaway.
As do I.
I have them 11-1.
Yeah, I think that's very realistic. I think their defense needs to get better, but I think their schedule kind of allows for that. I think Kirby Smart is not great in game, but I think he's one of the better preparers in football, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
I just think their roster is just chock full of talent. And he's a defensive guy, and I know he couldn't have not focused on it. I think their offense is going to be really good. I like Fromm a lot. I think Swift's going to have a huge year. I just think defensively they need to get better. They're deep, but they're not. Their starters on defense aren't great. They're just very deep, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think they can afford this year to have some injuries where in years past it really hurt them. So I think 11-1 is, I don't want to say very safe, but I see it.
Yeah, I think they trip up at Auburn.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think they'll beat Notre Dame. I think Florida could be weird, but at Auburn and then home to A&M. I think it's Florida-Auburn is probably where they trip up.
Over under 11. It's
hard to bet over that.
No.
If Fromm gets hurt, then you're screwed.
I have Florida coming in second by default, but I don't like this Florida team at all.
Are you a Mullins guy?
I liked him prior to coming back, but I don't know if I like him anymore.
What is with the Florida team? Why can't they find a good quarterback? It's really weird.
Yeah, I don't get it.
They should be able to recruit whoever they want.
And the schedule's not overly difficult, so I still have them winning 9 games. The over-under set at 9, but I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, big first game with Miami. It seems like there's 4 or 5 teams where that first week's really going to set the tone. They get Auburn at home, which I think is big, but they have to go at LSU, and then they get Georgia. I think they're good.
That South Carolina could be a dog spot. LSU, Georgia sandwich. Yep.
I would agree. I don't think South Carolina's going to be very good. They have a very, very tough schedule. So they might be beat up, but I like your thinking there. But even if let's say they beat Miami week 1, I still think they lose to Auburn, LSU, Georgia, at least 2 of those games. But they probably have 8 or 9 wins because they're playing nobody.
Yeah.
Which is weird to say in the SEC, but maybe Kelly Bryant gets it going at Mizzou and that last game's tougher. I don't know, but that middle of the schedule, Tennessee, Towson, Kentucky, UT Martin should give them, some good wins.
I don't really have much feel for the rest of the division. Tennessee over under 6.5, Missouri over under 8, Kentucky over under 6.5, South Carolina over under 5.5, and Vandy over under 5.
I don't like any of those. I think they're all good numbers.
Yep.
I see this sort of like the bottom of the Pac-12 South. I think they're all going to rotate wins, and really, who cares?
Yep, agree. So Georgia comes out of that, I think, fairly easily. Other side, I really wanted to go against Bama somewhere, but I couldn't find a spot.
Oh, you think they go undefeated?
I do. LSU is the only game that I struggled with. But I cannot go against Saban with a week to prepare against Orgeron.
Yeah, I had the same issues. I kind of wanted to give Auburn a win at the end. Maybe that quarterback gets it going or something. I'm with you. I have them undefeated just by default. I'm not sure they're as good as they've been. I'm not sure Tua is very good. Last year against LSU, Georgia, and A&M, so the three best defenses he played, he had 4 TDs, or not A&M, Clemson. LSU, Georgia, Clemson. 4 interceptions, 5 touchdowns. Versus all the rest of football is where he got his 36 touchdowns and no picks.
I'm not a believer in Tua either.
So, when he played good D, he was, I get it, he was nicked up, whatever. Don't care. He did not play well against better defenses.
Yeah, I guess A&M, LSU, maybe Mississippi State, even though they have to replace a lot, those would be his tests this year.
Yeah, to me Auburn could give him some trouble. But those 3 games to me it's at A&M, LSU, and Auburn are the only logical places. They'll probably be double-digit favorites in all those games, though.
Yeah, over-under's 11. I guess I lean over, but if Tua gets hurt, who knows? He's had injury issues.
Yeah, I am not going to touch an 11 number.
Yeah.
But it's just hard to find a loss. I think the more the value, if you want 4 against Alabama, I think the value is they run the table and you bet against them week 1 of the playoffs.
Yeah.
This is just where my head's at.
LSU over under 9. I cannot trust Ed Orgeron to win more than 9 games. I do have them winning 10, but I don't feel great about it.
I really want to like this team because I think Burrow's the best quarterback they've had in a while.
Yeah, I agree.
but yeah, they got, they have some tough spots on the schedule. Texas, I think, is week 2.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
They get Florida at home. They get Auburn at home. They got to go to Bama. They get A&M at home. It even trips to Mississippi State. I just think that schedule is asking a lot for them to really win all those games.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I'm with you.
I'm a little high on Mississippi State. I do think Moorhead has a quarterback now with the Penn State transfer in Stevens. Fitzgerald was so bad last year. I have them winning 9 games.
Whoa, Mississippi State?
I don't feel confident in playing the over 7.5, but I like them.
Wow, I have Auburn and A&M ahead of them.
Oh, I'm down on Auburn this year. Okay.
I like the under in Auburn. I think they're 9.5. I think they win 8 games, but I think there's that big pool that wins 7 or 8 games.
I have Auburn at win total at 8.
Yeah, that's total.
Yeah, they're total. They're Vegas.
Boy, that really came down.
Yeah, correct.
All right, well then that's probably a stay away from me. 'Cause that's kind of what I have them at.
I know Malzahn gets a freshman quarterback this year, but how hot is his seat?
I would think. 8 is probably. 8 is probably a discussion. I think 7 is no doubt gone.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I think you're right. The schedule's not easy either.
the hottest in the country.
Yeah, I think you're right. Him and I want to say Fuente at Virginia Tech's pretty hot, and Helton at USC.